found this website about. I'm pretty sure it's a joke. At least I really hope it's a joke. That's basically this dude that's got this whole conspiracy theory that birds aren't real.
Oh, the birds are the bourgeoisie.
Yeah, well, they're so what the theory is anyway. This
Right.
is the officially accepted theory of why birds aren't real, is because the government wanted a way to surveil everybody in the US. So what the government did was, and another problem was apparently birds were getting too much feces everywhere. So that had to be dealt with. So what they did was they killed off all of the birds, and all the birds you see now are basically just very sophisticated surveillance drones.
Hey, I wouldn't put it past them.
But how are you?
I'm good, man. I've just been busy with work stuff and same old, and it is what it is.
You excited for this tournament, I guess?
Yeah, I'm kind of bummed out. Like I was really okay. So because you're an SFA guy, like you don't make it in if you're a school like SFA, Texas State, like we've talked about. Like you don't make it in unless you win your tournament, right?
Yeah.
And so, Texas State had just a fantastic season. We were the number one team in the conference. We did so well, looked so good, all this kind of stuff, right? Went into our tournament in the Sun Belt, and I was like, okay, all you got to do is win 3 games because you got the first round bye, you get the worst team after that. Like, all you got to do is win 3 games, right? And you can get into the tournament. and my expectations going into it weren't even like, okay, win the tournament and then make it to the tournament, to the NCAA tournament. Let's go from there. I was like, really, all I want you guys to do is make it to the Sun Belt Championship game. I want to watch you guys try to play for like the automatic bid, right?
Yeah.
And then we got booted in the first round of our Sun Belt tournament, just on a crazy game with Appalachian State, who ended up being the bid for the Sun Belt. But I'm like, it was just we were up big, and then we just blew it. And then came back in the last minute on like unlike anything I've ever seen. I think we were down by 8 with like less than a minute, and we came back and tied it, and then we just blew it in overtime. And so, I knew we were gonna get our doors blown off probably by like Ohio State or a number 1 seed or a 2 seed. But I just wanted to watch my team make it 1 year, just to watch them play on the main stage. But we'll see what happens next year. But there's no better time of year than this. This is such a fun. It's so fun. Like I can't.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I was talking to my buddy. This is like our first time. He and I are both big sports fans, and he's like, "This is the first time I watched March Madness stuff together after the delay last year." I'm like, "Yeah." And it's just such a fun time. Like, there's no better weekend than the first weekend of March Madness.
Yeah, it's definitely a welcome. I'm not going to call it a surprise. It's welcome to have it back.
Yeah.
After not getting to see it last year, because for me personally, like, Grant, I don't do the best job of staying up on college basketball throughout the course of a regular season.
Right.
But at the same time, March Madness, it's kind of, I feel like March Madness is somewhat like the Olympics for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like when the Olympics aren't happening, I don't give any craps about most of the sports that are in the Olympics. But once the Olympics start, I'm like, okay, I'm the world's biggest expert on curling now.
Yeah. You're not paying attention to track and field, but then once the 100, that's like how Melina is. She is. I mean, she loves the gymnastics stuff, and people like this it cracks me up, and I do the same thing. It's like you never watch gymnastics every 4 years, but then every 4 years, everybody becomes gymnastics experts, right? Like, oh my God, did you see how she landed that little? Nobody knows what's actually happening here. We don't know if the judges are actually basing things off of, but we all become gymnastic experts just out of nowhere, and that's how I feel about. I'm totally with you on the March Madness stuff. Like I pay attention a little bit. I don't really watch outside of my school. And then when March Madness happens, I'm like just glued to what's happening. Like right now, I'm watching App State versus Norfolk State.
Appalachian State's struggling right now.
Yeah. That should have been Texas State getting blown out by App State or by Norfolk State.
Yeah, playing for the right to get blown out by Gonzaga.
That's right. In Virginia, which is where Norfolk is, that's how they pronounce it. They call it Norfolks.
Norfolk. Okay.
Yeah, there's a Norfolk. Like real draw. Yeah, the Norfolk. And there's another town that I was always confused about. They called it. It's spelled similar, but it's called Suffolk, but spelled SOSUFFLOK, something like that. Somebody from Jerry's gonna listen to this and be like, "This guy has no idea what he's talking about."
So wait, okay, yeah, I forgot you lived in Virginia for a little bit. So
yeah,
I mean, Appalachian State, that's in West Virginia, right? So you're saying it different than me. You're saying Appalachian. Is that the correct pronunciation?
Yeah, I don't know. I've always heard it as like Appalachian is or something like that. The Shin is like real weird, Appalachian State or something like that. But that's in North Carolina.
Okay. Oh. People might be surprised to learn that I graduated with a degree in geography.
No.
But yeah, it sounds like one of those pecan situations.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let's dive into it a little bit. Who are you picking for this tournament?
I don't know. So I found this article, and this might be for at least my benefit, somebody who hasn't totally followed the season. Because they were they even confirmed to be having the tournament until pretty recently, right? Or were they planning to do it the entire time?
I think they planned on doing it the whole time, but I think a lot of people were like, well, let's see what happens. You know, similar to the college football stuff, like, yeah, let's see what happens.
Yeah, I think my mind is just, it's ever since like sports ended a year ago, it's like I definitely got rusty in keeping up with sports. Like I was just like, I was talking to somebody last week and they were like, yeah, I can't wait for the tournament to start next week. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Okay, so we got this is from Sports Illustrated, and I'm actually going to read the articles instead of just trying to
catch the headline.
Yeah. Okay, so we got our top 10 teams, or 10 teams most likely to win the tournament according to Sports Illustrated.
Ooh.
Number 1, obvious choice of Gonzaga. Right.
Okay.
They're undefeated right now. They potentially run the tables if they put things together. I mean, anytime there's an undefeated team, I feel like there's an obvious temptation to want to go with them. Who was the last big one? Was it
Kentucky with Anthony Davis?
And did they lose to Wisconsin?
They lost to Wisconsin, and as we'll kind of go down these teams, I guess. And so I was really tempted to pick Gonzaga because I think they're a great team. They've got some great players, and they've been there before, right? Like they've been kind of around so long, and I do expect them to win a championship. I just really think going completely undefeated through an entire season is such a tall task.
Yeah, for sure.
And I go off of that Kentucky one is probably the biggest reason why, because I just think that, like, man, that was such a great team, and it's just so hard to win that many games in a row, I think. And eventually the law of averages, or whatever you want to call it, I feel like it's going to play something out to where Gonzaga is going to drop against some strong competition. I think they're the best team. I really do think they're the best team in the tournament. I just think it's so hard to go undefeated, honestly.
Yeah, and you always have like at least like no matter who you are, you always have like a game. It feels like where there's just like a cluster moment,
right?
The game, and you're out of timeouts, and it's just like you got to call play. Like you got to figure out like, okay, we need a shot made. We got to get to the other end of the court. We don't have any timeouts. Can the players figure it out on their own? Because it was interesting. I was watching the game before this was Wichita State and Drake, and I kind of feel like Wichita. Granted, there was more than the last shot they missed, but it felt like Wichita State kind of blew the game. But regardless,
my buddy's a big time Wichita State guy. He was bummed out.
Yeah. So I was watching it, and obviously, like I'm not at all involved in the play of what's happening, so it's really easy for me to just watch the game and be like, "Oh, why didn't you do this? It would have been much easier."
Listen, you're not involved in the game, Kenny, but you are officially a podcaster now. So you have a right to say these things.
Yeah. I mean, I probably couldn't I couldn't probably run lines anymore, like do one rep of running lines in basketball anymore versus like actually play like any extended minutes in a basketball game anymore. But anyway, watching the game at the end there, it was like Wichita State had a chance to win. You had a guy miss a free throw, but you don't have any timeouts, so you just got to go and hope you figure something out. And the guy who I don't remember the name of the guy who took it up, but he took it and I feel like he took
a decent look.
I didn't even think it was that great of a look. It was like I felt like he pulled up really early, and it was also kind of contested. Right. But I mean, you also look at like his teammates. Like his teammates weren't really in any position to be helpful either. Right. And it was interesting. It was like I watched that play, and the play it reminded me of, because of how it was successful, was Villanova's game winner against North Carolina in the championship game in 2016, which was I don't know if you remember that game a whole lot, but it was one of my favorite. Like
It
that
was a
game,
great game. Yeah, that was the game-winning. Did he hit just a jump? Was it a three-pointer or just a
it was a
two at the end?
3-pointer. Yeah.
Okay.
That game, that game still sticks out in my mind as being probably one of my favorite college basketball games I've ever watched.
Right.
Just because you had like it wasn't like you had guys missing a bunch of shots. Like, I mean, Villanova and North Carolina were trading blows there at the end, and it was really exciting. But anyway, the difference of that game, and like I was trying to remember back to it, and I actually went and looked up the play-by-play, was Villanova was able to call a timeout in that situation. And the difference of that's like, I don't know if this is how it was drawn up, or, again, there was only like a handful of seconds left. So you really you can't get that detailed on any sort of extravagant play.
Right.
But the difference was you have Archie Diacono is running up the court. But the key thing was he gets like the two defenders on him, focusing on him. But you have it's Chris. I was just looking at the it was Chris Jenkins, I think.
Okay, that's right. Pascal was another.
I knew Jenkins was the last name. I was trying to remember his first name. But yeah, you see Chris Jenkins is slowly streaking up behind him, and Diacono creates like the space for Jenkins. Basically, like, there's a North Carolina guy that kind of gets in the way, but overall Jenkins has a much more clear look than the guy from Wichita State did. And I was trying to think like, okay, was this an example of better before I looked at the play-by-play, I was trying to see, was this just an example of, better being in the moment of Diacono? But I go back to it and I was like, it's probably because you got a timeout. Anyway, all of that to say, going back to like Gonzaga is like when you find yourself in those situations of just like, how well are you actually coached, or no matter how good of a player you are, it's just like,
right.
I feel like
things are going to happen.
Things are going to happen. It's like, are your players going to be able to make like that smart play on the fly? Because like, to Diacono's credit, in that whole sequence in the Villanova, North Carolina sequence, like, I feel like 9 out of 10 guys, and maybe even Diacono 9 times out of 10, is probably going to ego that and try and take the shot himself. Because like, who doesn't want to have a shot at making a game-winning shot like that in the NCAA tournament? So like, I mean, a lot of credit to, I think, in that moment, to Diacono for passing it up to the guy with a better shot. And obviously Jenkins for making the shot too. But and the whole Villanova team, they were great. That was a great squad. Like, you had Jalen Brunson. You had Jalen Brunson on that team, Josh Hart. But anyway.
So that was a great team. Great team, great school. I mean, they're a solid team. They are, I don't know if they're in your top 10, so I was going to wait here to see, but I have Villanova as my champions this year.
Oh, okay. Villanova.
I like to get crazy with a little bit. I think it's just fun to be a little out there. I don't know. I mean, they're just kind of my guess to win, but my thought process behind it is, well, between Duke being out and Kentucky being out and UNC being an 8 seed, like, I think they could be okay, but they're still not doing that great this year. Like, all the blue bloods, right? Those usual guys, those big time schools, especially Duke and Kentucky, like we said, are not involved this year. And I'm thinking, who's got the coach who's been in those situations before, that knows kind of what to do and what plays to call. And Jay Wright, to me, I think is kind of that perfect example. And so I'm kind of leaning toward things like that. That's why I have UVA actually eventually beating Gonzaga to make the Final Four. So I'm very similar to Tony Bennett with UVA, like solid team, solid coaching. Like, they've been there. I feel like experience is going to play a big role in this tournament this year.
Yeah. Definitely see your point. And I mean, Villanova, they've got a pretty decent, like, if they can put things together, they've got a pretty decent path to make a solid run. Like, provided they win the matchups they should.
Yeah.
Purdue could be a tough one, but Baylor's probably their biggest challenge if they're going to make a solid run at anything. But
right,
I don't know. So going back that 2016 year, I actually picked Villanova to win at the beginning, and that's like the only time in my life I've ever before, like, from the start of the tournament, actually picked the winner to win.
Yep.
And I was really
it's awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't even honestly say it was because I just was like, all in on Villanova. I went with a strategy. Like I was doing an office pool bracket. Like we all put our
Right.
brackets in for money and stuff. And so I kind of just went with a strategy of that of like they were in the same region as Kansas that year. And so I was like, I bet everybody's gonna pick Kansas. So
you went with
I'm trying to. I was like,
points.
I'm trying to figure out like, okay, so if everybody picks Kansas, who am I thinking? Like, if I wanted to try and get an edge on everybody, who am I going to pick to basically like get an advantage in that region? And I think I was the only person to not pick Kansas, and coincidentally picked Villanova. Grant, I also got helped out that year by Michigan State getting knocked out really early because that was another team a lot of people had picked.
See that I think off the top of my head, I think that was I picked Michigan State to win that year, and they lost super early.
Yeah, they lost to Middle Tennessee, and I was actually kind of sad because I think that game was played in St. Louis when I was living there, and I was just like, and I thought about trying to get over to the game, so I was like, who wants to watch Michigan State Middle Tennessee?
That's gonna be a blowout. But little did we know.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I was really proud of myself that year for picking all that. And so they're like and by the time we were to I think by like the Final Four, just because of how I picked a lot of games, I had already like won my pool, but I was already at the point of like I gotta
brag about it.
Yeah, but I stayed rooting for Villanova that year just because I was like, I won. Now it's your guys' turn to win.
Yeah, and they're a fun team to root for, in my opinion. I think they're they kind of have. They're not one of those one and done schools,
right?
And they've got a good, solid foundation with them and everything, and they're always in the mix. So I thought, let's see what happens. I'll kind of piggyback off of yours. I'm totally understand your strategy. That the 1 year, my like best year with the bracket ever, as I remember it. I don't remember the year off the top of my head exactly, but you might. Is the year that Kimber Walker took UConn to and won the championship. So I actually picked UConn that year.
Was that when they played Butler? Was that like Gordon Hayward's Butler too?
It might have been. It wasn't because
I want to say
Butler,
that was like
because Butler was there maybe 2 years in a row because Butler lost to Duke that one time, and the one where Gordon Hayward almost hit the huge buzzer-beating three.
Yeah,
remember that one?
Yeah.
It might have been someone around that time, but it was around that. Anyways, whenever Kimba took the Huskies to the championship is when I picked them. And it was similar idea, like you said, kind of go against what everybody else was saying. But the only reason I really picked them because I loved Kimba Walker first off, still do. And they had won the like Maui Invitational, and then during the regular season they were awful, but they won the Maui Invitational to start the season against some good teams. And then they played the regular season, they were so bad, and then they won the Big East tournament off some of those cardiac Kimba plays where he did the step back jump or whatever. And I was like, obviously these guys are pretty good at playing tournaments, so I'll just pick them. And they happened to win, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. So it was. I'm with you. Like when you have the winner, especially the one that's like no one else picks it, kind of a deal. Like if it's one of those years where it's the obvious, like everybody had Louisville winning that 1 year that they won, and it was like, okay, well that was kind of fun. But when it's a team that nobody expected to win, and they come back or they come and do that, it's so fun to watch. And you start rooting for schools you never even thought you would even care about, Like to this day, UConn is still one of my favorite schools to watch because of that moment,
Yeah. You kind of start like, and I feel like once you pick like a team like that to win, that's just like the not obvious choice, and they do. I feel like for the rest of your life, you get like whenever March Madness comes up, you get like this like feeling of being like I'm like the Mel Kiper of March Madness, like
Now, see, I think it was fun to watch that, but I think since then, I've been just like, I'm gonna do a similar strategy. I'm gonna pick something that's kind of out there, and then now since then it really hasn't happened, but it's just fun. Like you pick your brackets right, and then you start crossing things off, but then you have like one team that you picked that could make a run, and you're like, I'm putting all my eggs in this basket. I just want to watch these guys. I've never even been anywhere close to Philadelphia, but I want to watch Villanova win or KU or whoever it is. It's just fun to kind of root for teams you never thought you'd root for,
Yeah. Before I look it up, I'm going to say the year Kimba Walker won was 2012.
Okay. 2012.
I think I'm pretty sure it was UConn versus Butler. And I want to say Gordon Hayward was on that team still. And I feel like I remember that championship game being like relatively low scoring, like even for college basketball. Like I remember like both teams were just struggling on offense.
Yeah.
Okay, so bring it up.
Hold on, I'm gonna use my context clues one more time too, because I'm trying to remember my life situation at that point in time. I'm pretty sure I was kind of in Austin because I remember I was like coaching a boys and girls basketball team, a boys and girls club basketball team, and I remember coming in the next day after the tournament and being like, "Guys, we got to work on free throws because UConn won because they hit a bunch of free throws." And the other team didn't hit any free throws, but I thought that was against Kentucky. So I'm going to say 2000. No, that's way too early. I think that might have been the year that Shabazz Napier won for UConn. Okay, go ahead. You do your thing. Tell me who it was. I'm with you. 2011 or 12 would be my guess.
Yeah, I was 1 year off. It's 2011.
2011. Okay.
Yeah,
and it was against Butler.
Well, I just went to Kemba Walker's
Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
2011 national championship. Let's look it up real quick. That was UConn 53 to 41. So you're on the right track. And it was against Butler. You're right. Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
That was your VCU made it a really far run, and Kentucky had made it to the Final Four also.
Right. Okay.
Played where? Where you got a guess on where it was played?
I don't know if it was because it was. I feel like Butler's leading me down the wrong path here. I just remember because it was an Indiana team, people getting excited. I'm gonna guess Indianapolis, but I feel like that's wrong.
It's actually in Houston.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I remember. I feel like I can remember a lot of championship games. I can't really. I don't know if I can most of the time remember where they were actually played.
See, yeah, and that's the thing too is I will absolutely admit I'm not a great championship game watcher when I'm not really super invested in the teams kind of deal. I mean, a championship game, I'm kind of like, okay, like I remember UVA versus Texas Tech, Virginia Texas Tech. That should have been a game I was interested in, and I didn't really watch a whole lot of it for some reason.
Yeah, I think it feels like for a lot of people, March Madness kind of starts and ends with the first weekend.
Yeah.
So that's when there's all the excitement of like the Cinderellas and stuff like that.
Well, and you're watching a game like every 5 minutes a game ends, right?
Yeah.
Around that, like every 15, 20 minutes, you're watching a game that is finishing. So you can finish up one game, and then you'll switch right to another game, and it's just a blast.
Yeah. And I think I remember 2 years ago, the last tournament we were able to have, people actually got kind of bummed out because it was like there wasn't a lot of upsets in the first round.
Yeah.
And it was like a bunch of teams that were supposed to win were winning. Mm-hmm. And, originally, like in the first round, like, this kind of sucks because you love having like those Cinderellas, but like, I actually thought it made the deeper rounds of the tournament more enjoyable because you were actually watching like the best of the best teams go against each other versus like a team who kind of maybe had like a fluke win against like a Baylor or somebody, and now all of a sudden they're playing Duke, and Duke just like, or whoever it is, just like stomps through them.
Yeah.
Because like I feel like in the first round, depending on who you are, like you can get away with sneaking a win off a team just because there's like I'm not saying Norfolk is going to beat Gonzaga, but it's like how much film has Gonzaga watched on Norfolk? Right, probably none. Like they're not even focused on that. They're probably looking at like the teams they're expecting to play deeper on, and if like I feel particularly like if you're a college kid, I feel like it's probably not difficult to all of a sudden like, oh, this team knows how to play basketball.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden like you just get caught in this game that you're like, oh, what do we do now? And it's like you're go into a game you're expecting to be a scrimmage, and all of a sudden like, oh, we're playing for our tournament lives now. Like which we saw with like Virginia a few years ago.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say about Virginia was like, I don't know about how you feel about it, but I was kind of like when Virginia lost to UMBC, and it was the first 16-1 upset, right?
Yeah.
It was kind of weird to watch. Like I wasn't super like I liked Virginia, so that might have been the thing. I wish it wasn't Virginia, and I think I was in Virginia at the time too, and so it was kind of weird for that to begin with. And some of my friends who were UVA grads were just like so bummed out and just like that was supposed to be our year. And they got their redemption the next year. But either way, I just remember watching that game, and UMBC like just blew them out of the water, right? Like it wasn't even close. It was like a 20-point win or something like that by this little Baltimore college.
It was like you kept expecting Virginia to like, okay, this is when they're going to put the run together.
Wake up, let's go, wake up.
Yeah.
But I just remember the game ending and just being like, oh, that just happened.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I wish it had been like a buzzer beater, just crazy, you know, big time play, but it just was like, oh, okay, that happened. That there you go, 16 just beat a one. Okay, here we are. You know, like
Right. Yeah.
it was just weird. What? Let me ask you this: what is your favorite or standout moment of some of the early rounds, big upsets? Give me one of your standout moments all time of you watching the NCAA tournament.
Oh, I because I went to SFA and I was going to
Yeah,
SFA at the time, it's
yeah.
hard not to think of a moment outside of when I mean obviously SFA had the big win over West Virginia after this, but the first win we got when we beat VCU like 2 years before that.
Mhm.
I wouldn't say this was 2014 because this was the year I was graduating. It was so cool being like on campus for that uh moment. And they're like, I remember, so at SFA, like, I imagine we have a lot looser rules of a lot of things that a lot of other campuses do. So, like, it was pretty common for me and like buddies and stuff like that. We would go play Ultimate
Mhm.
down on like the football field, like the main football field, like our main football
Oh
field
yeah,
on
yeah.
and
You
everything.
can't get
So,
away with that at UT.
yeah, exactly. So we were playing Ultimate out there, and I mean, there wasn't a ton of us out there because the tournament game was happening. But one of my buddies had the game up on his phone, and remember we were just like watching it there, and we were like, we got to that point where like SFA was down by like 4 points with 10 seconds left, and I was just
Mhm.
like, this sucks. You know,
Fun time. Yeah.
we had a shot, and then I forget who it was that hit the shot, but he hit like a 3-pointer and like off getting fouled too, so he had the chance for the 4-pointer.
Right.
And it was just such a great moment. And then so that was a lot of fun because I got to be there for it.
See, when you guys beat West Virginia, you said it was a couple years later, right? That was another year. I think I remember having West Virginia as the team that I was going to have win, and y'all beat them like in the first round or something like that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I
Uh,
remember that being year being like, well, there goes. Like, there's the team that was going to have you. Like, even when your team loses like that, the team that you picked, it's like, oh, okay, there you go. And I think I remember picking West Virginia that year because they had Javon Carter, I think, maybe on that team. Um,
uh, I don't
Not
remember
you
who else was
guys.
on that team.
Either way, I think I remember watching. Y'all had that one white guy with the red beard. You remember all
Thomas
that time?
Walkup.
Yeah, he was y'all's like big time player, right?
Yeah, he's one of those dudes. Like I'm pretty sure, like if he goes back to Nacogdoches to this day, he probably get free meals.
Nice. Yeah, so that's good. Those are good memories for sure.
Yeah, we actually because of all the I know like the education violations or whatever, SFA couldn't
Yeah.
actually even participate in their conference tourneys this year. So it's kind of like a little
Bummer.
bit of a letdown.
Yeah.
Uh, but actually, speaking of all that SFA stuff, it's going to lead me into a team. Granted, again, I haven't been following a ton of college basketball this year,
Who cares? That's the
but
fun
I feel
part.
like the team I'm going and piggybacking off what you said earlier with the experience thing, I think I'm going to put my alliance going into this with Illinois.
Illinois. Okay.
Yeah, because at least unless he got fired and I just totally missed it, but pretty sure Brad Underwood is still there.
That was
Uh,
y'all's guys from SFA, right?
yeah, Brad let me double check this before I go off on a tangent, and then it'd be like, nah, he actually got fired a year ago, so none of what you just
No,
said
I think
makes
you're
sense.
right. No, I think
Yeah,
you're right because he went to Oklahoma State for like a weird little time in Oklahoma State.
yeah. So the timeline for Brad Underwood, right? So before Brad Underwood, we had Danny Casper, I think.
Oh, that's my guy from Texas State.
Yeah, and he resigned this last year, right?
Yeah, a little bit of a resigned with disgrace deal.
Oh, okay. Well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But yeah, he left us, and then Brad Underwood came in, and I don't know what it was necessarily about Brad Underwood that was just a godsend to SFA. Like it seemed like he knew how to recruit and
Yeah.
had really good game plans. And I think like you saw that in the game against West Virginia, like he just out schemed them. Like he had that whole like basically it wasn't like a proper full court press, but it was sort of a mixture
Brad
of a full court
Underwood,
press.
full
Yeah,
court press.
yeah. And I think the technical term is it's like up the line, down the line defense. But anyway, because of all that experience, it's probably why I'm going to go on Illinois to win, or just who I'll stick with because I've seen twice in the tournament what Brad Underwood's been able to do with guys who our first tournament run with him ended against UCLA.
Mhm.
And I don't even know, like, the big thing UCLA had was they were like just way bigger. But like overall, they just had like physical edge over SFA. Like SFA was never going to win that game.
Right.
And I think a similar thing happened the following year. SFA lost in the first round to Utah. And then honestly, SFA was a wild experience, wild sequence of events from beating Notre Dame too, after they beat West Virginia and going to the Sweet 16. So all that to say, I've seen what Brad Underwood has done with players who
you can call lower skill level.
Yeah. So now that he's got like, I'll say a stud team, I think he's definitely poised to make that. They can make a pretty good run of it.
Yeah. What about a team that you're kind of off a little bit rooting for? Maybe have a team you would like to watch win, other than Illinois.
I'll probably just because they're the local team, I'll probably be stick at rooting for U of H throughout the whole thing too.
Okay.
Yeah, they've had some good runs in the recent past, and honestly, and because we have Kelvin Sampson, who looks like he's going to be sticking around for a while, it actually kind of looks like U of H could sustain the success for a while, which could be pretty exciting.
They've been good for a while too.
Yeah. I'd probably go UH. I mean, Texas. Texas Southern could be fun, but they're 16 seeds, so they're not going to go far. I probably don't have a lot of teams. It's probably going to be one of those that's going to vary from game to game, and as I can learn more about
teams and players, storylines.
Yeah. Because you always have like those teams where you're like, I don't know, you have those guys who like have their hero moments through the tournament, and like I feel like you have like your Steph Currys and your Anthony Davises, right? Who kind of make a name for. I mean, Anthony Davis was a big deal before the tournament.
Yeah, the Kemba Walkers.
They kind of have like, they make their legend in March, but they also have a pretty successful NBA career.
Right.
But there's also like plenty of guys who you'll find who are like this insane amount of success during the tournament, and then after that tournament, you never hear about them again. Like,
right.
So I'm excited to find out about those guys. I feel like once those moments start happening, I'll be like, all right, this team's pretty cool. I want to see how far they go.
I will say my team has got to be the Oklahoma State Cowboys.
Okay.
I'll be rooting for Reed and his boys. And I like that Cade Cunningham is really good. I actually met somebody the other day who knows him like personally. Has kind of talked to him personally. He's like, yeah, he's a really good kid and rooting for him kind of deal. So okay, cool. Somebody you can root for a little bit. So I'll probably put my eggs in the basket of Oklahoma State. And I know we're getting off track with these things too. What about
we're not getting so far off track. We've at least brought up two other teams that were on Sports Illustrated's.
Okay, cool. Let's do the 10. Let's do 10.
So Oklahoma State is number 5. Listed as number 5 is have it most likely, and Illinois is listed as number 2.
Gotcha.
They've got Baylor as being the number 3, which Baylor is the number 1 seed in the South region. I'm hesitant to pick Baylor just because I've been burned more. Like my brackets have been burned more times by Baylor first round losses than I choose to remember. So it's just
that was one of my top moments I remember watching was the kid Hunter, RJ Hunter, hitting the 3-pointer against Baylor. I'm pretty sure for Georgia State.
Was that the one where his dad was the coach of the team and he was like,
yep, he fell off the chair.
Yeah, that was a classic moment.
Yeah. So I get what you're saying. So anyways, keep going. So Baylor 3. We're hesitant to pick them. I'm with you on that. I've got that's where my Nova comes from, is beating Baylor as Nova over Baylor.
Okay. Number 4, we've got Alabama.
Okay, that sucks, doesn't it? They can't be good at basketball too, right? That's not fair.
I mean, I honestly don't know much about Alabama as a college basketball team, so I have no.
Do they still have Avery Johnson as their coach?
That's a good question.
Avery Johnson.
Well, they say
I'm with you.
Most recently served as head. The way his Wikipedia reads,
2019 he was out. Okay.
Yeah. So who's their coach now? Well,
Arkansas is another fun team that's
Nate
in it this year.
Oates.
Yeah,
Nate
I don't even
Oates
know
is
that
the
guy.
coach.
Anyways, okay, so Alabama's at 5. Is that what you said? 4.
They're number 4. Oklahoma State
Okay.
is 5.
Oklahoma State's 5.
Number 6, we've got Florida State.
Gotcha.
Number 7, we've got Arkansas. Number 8, Ohio State. 9 is Texas. And then at number 10 is Michigan.
See,
which
that's
I mean,
interesting that Michigan is 10 and they're a 1 seed.
yeah, well, the issue they've got there is Isaiah Livers is apparently probably not going to come back.
Is that was like their top player? Yeah. It's going to be weird with all the COVID stuff, too. Like, they got all the COVID protocols. Like, I know a few. I think that one of the guys for Kansas, one of the top players, is that. Like, Oklahoma lost one of their top players, another Dallas area kid. I guess he's not playing the opening round because of COVID stuff. So it's just going to be odd stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, and there was like, I remember during championship week, I kept seeing stuff pop up in my feed of like, Duke is out of the tournament because of
COVID.
And
UVA, KU is out. Like,
yeah,
it's just wild. Okay, here we go. We got 10 seconds left in this Norfolk versus App State here. Okay.
Oh, they made
App State made a comeback. Appalachian made his comeback, and so we got about 8 seconds left. The madness has already begun. Okay, so so it'll be a fun year for sure. Who are some of your favorite players you've watched in college basketball? Some of your favorite. Do you have an all-time starting 5 of favorite players you've ever watched in college basketball?
I feel like I don't know if I could put together a proper starting 5. I could probably put together names I remember first seeing in the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And guys I remember enjoying watching. Growing up, so I was born in Oklahoma, so originally like in the tournament, like whenever OU was there, I'd be like pulling for them. I think I remember one year, and I might have the timing on this actually off. But I feel like I remember OU played Utah when Andrew Bogut was on Utah. So Andrew Bogut is a guy that sticks out to me because I just remember like I want to say I was like 10 or 11. And just being like, what the hell's this Australian guy doing playing on a Utah basketball team?
Yeah.
So Andrew Bogut sticks out to me just because, for no other reason than he was just an interesting guy that was in the tournament.
Yeah.
I'd say Archie Diacono from Villanova.
Nice.
I enjoyed watching, like, that whole championship run was pretty fun to watch. Steph Curry was pretty fun to watch when he was on Davidson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'd probably have to join you on the Kemba Walker thing too.
I love that guy.
I'm trying to remember, I liked watching Emeka Okafor in college, but I'm trying to remember if he had a really good tournament run or not.
Yeah.
Well, what about you? I feel like you've probably got people queued up a lot better than I do.
Like I said, I've got my Kemba love for sure. One guy that was really one of my favorite dudes to watch, just because he just dominated to me. Remember DeJuan Blair from Pitt? Big old boy.
I remember the name.
He played for San Antonio for the Spurs for a while. Played for the Mavericks for a little bit.
Yeah.
I just loved watching that guy. So DeJuan Blair was a big guy for me. Like I said, the UConn guys, I can remember Kimba for sure. And I also really liked watching Rudy Gay for UConn when he played for them. So guys like that. Jalen Brunson was a lot of fun. I'll also say one more shout out for Villanova. So I'll give another Villanova guy, Josh Hart, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Josh Hart kind of had my heart a little bit, pun intended, because he was also an Eagle Scout. So shout out to our fellow Eagle Scout brother there.
Right.
And so, Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, those guys, those were a lot of fun. But DeJuan Blair is probably another big one that, like I said earlier, like I remember he was just big and meaty, and like I could relate to him because we had the big backsides, and he would just mow people down the lane and just, get offensive rebounds like crazy. And he was just so fun to watch.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of hard for me to, I feel like I remember moments a lot better in college, like the tournament, than I remember
players specifically,
which I feel like is kind of a cool element of college basketball that the NBA, like you don't really have the same thing in NBA.
Right.
Where it's just like I feel like you fall in love with the teams more than like
like
the players are a part of it, obviously, but
the Cinderella team, right? And App State. Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, like you and I were talking about like our like love for like UConn and Villanova,
right?
But the guys we watched win those championships haven't played for either of those schools in years.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
Uh, so yeah, because I'm trying to think, like, because even players like I feel like I can remember watching a lot in college. Like I remember being really excited about watching Blake Griffin play in college, just because he like physically like dominated everybody, and he was just like exciting to watch anyway because he was just
absolutely.
which might actually be a nice segue if do we want to
Let's
keep
get.
talking about?
We had a lot of fun with the March Madness stuff.
Yeah, I
You
feel like
got Illinois. This is we promised that this was before everything ever happened. You got Illinois. I've got Villanova. March Madness is so fun. Saturday is the first day for it. 2 days from now for the real opening round. It's gonna be so good. Round of 64, and I'm sure we'll have more fun stuff to talk about it next week.
Oh yeah, for sure. So anyway, transitioning, we've got a lot of. I feel like because we're talking about basketball, I feel like it's a good segue to we can talk about all the stuff going on in the NBA because I feel like it's going to take less time than all the NFL stuff going on right now. It might not, or we can save NFL stuff for another week too.
Yeah.
But anyway, what do you think of Blake Griffin going to the Nets?
I don't really know how much of an impact it's going to have, to tell you the truth. Just with how I don't really know if I believe in him too much anymore. But he's only JT and I were texting about the other day. He's only like 33 years old. You know,
yeah, but he was drafted. I want to say like 2010 or something like that.
But it bums me out a little bit because I really felt like we were getting away from this absolute super team era. But the Nets quickly reminded us that like getting stars, being able to get stars in this league is way too easy. For some teams, I should say, it's way too easy. It's way too hard for good teams to keep for small market teams to keep their stars. It's way too easy for the big market teams who have the big names to get stars. And so, you know, I really felt like the last couple of years we started to shift to more parity in the NBA. We had duos. We had a lot of really solid duos like LeBron and AD. They're a super team too, but like. It's just like, okay, let's get Blake Griffin on the Nets. I don't know how much of an impact it's going to have, but it just makes you feel like, okay, well, here's another, you know, guy who was a all-star MVP type guy, you know, on another superstar team. And so here we go. Let's just keep watching him and see what happens and do that. So I don't know.
Yeah,
it just bums me out in a way. I don't know why. It just bums me out. Like, okay, cool. Blake Griffin couldn't have gone somewhere else maybe to try somebody like.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel that because like I feel like the duos thing is cool. Like in my mind, I like the idea of like I try to run through like an NBA who would be like the NBA Jam team on like, each roster. And it's kind of cool when you have like two guys on each team that kind of have like cool vibe with each other. Which like I was actually pretty bummed out to see like after this last season like James Harden and Russell Westbrook couldn't like
make things work.
Yeah, because I was like, that's a cool duo. You got like Utah's got this cool thing with Mike Conley and Donovan Mitchell. The Suns even have some stuff cooking with like Devin Booker and you
had Luka and KP, LeBron and AD, like
which
Clay still are pretty solid. Just all those great duos.
Yeah, which is crazy. Like all those guys, a lot of those guys we're talking about, with the exception of like James Harden and Russell Westbrook, obviously, like a lot of those guys are still on those teams. It's just now you've got Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Blake Griffin all on one team. So that's going to be
fun, I guess. I don't know.
It definitely feels like the cards are stacked in their favor right now. Like it's sort of like I feel like it right now. It's kind of hard to imagine like the Lakers and Nets aren't the two teams there at the end. Like just with the players those two guys have, it's like it's hard to imagine a lot of teams being able to challenge a 7-game series with those teams.
And it's so funny that we just got done talking about a bunch of NCAA stuff. There's no bigger difference between college and pro as it is in NCAA and NBA, right? Like the way the tournaments are played, the top players, the style, everything is so different, in my opinion, between college and professional. And like you can just look and say, okay, well, we know that these teams are probably going to make a pretty deep run. There's maybe every year, especially recently, there's maybe every year is like you can pinpoint 4 or 5 teams tops that you really think can make a run in the playoffs, right? And make it to the championship. There's no real Cinderella story in NBA stuff. So it just seems so obvious right now that Lakers and LeBron versus Nets and their superstar squad is this going to happen?
Yeah, it's like who else has even got a shot really? Like the Bucks, maybe.
Well, I mean, maybe Philadelphia, maybe Utah, but I just don't know if their experience really yields them to be able to keep up with the Lakers for 7 games. Maybe the Clippers, but like again, can you really go much further than that?
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing. And we were talking about this like a few weeks ago. Is like I feel like the NBA playoff system would benefit a lot. Like maybe like your finals can be a 7-game series because, or even your conference finals. But I feel like the first couple rounds would just maybe served by having shorter series because I feel like that would add a little bit more vulnerability to your top teams.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I think originally I was like, when I heard about Blake Griffin going to the Nets, I've kind of went a number of ways. I was like, this sucks. It's just another top player going to join like the super team that's basically forming before our eyes. And then I was like, well, Blake Griffin also I feel like Blake Griffin hasn't really been that big of an impact player for a while. But I mean, he actually has been putting up pretty solid numbers. I was looking for the Pistons. It's just the Pistons, for whatever reason, can't put a winning team on the floor anymore.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think.
They were good for so long.
I'll get back to the Pistons in a moment because there's a few teams like the Pistons that kind of make me worried about where the Rockets are going right now. So I was like, okay, Blake Griffin maybe isn't going to make a big impact, but honestly, like he's probably going to one of the best. Like, I mean, granted, it's the Nets anyway, so this is an obvious statement I'm about to say, like the best team he could go to right now. But
yeah,
I was thinking about how his play style combined with how James Harden can play, I feel like is going to complement each other really well. Because James Harden has been able to make bigs like Clint Capella, Dwight Howard, and I mean, Dwight Howard was solid before, but like they had this super slick play of they would literally all they had to do was set a pick for James Harden and just roll to the basket, and Harden would just like lob it up from, and they'd get easy, like a bunch of easy points by just doing easy pick and roll alley-oops. And I'm like, Blake Griffin can dunk. He can get to the hoop still. So, I mean, if he can set good picks for Harden, that's going to be...
Well, that's the thing, too. I saw a weird stat that can Blake Griffin still dunk? Because apparently he hasn't dunked in the last, like, 2 seasons.
Oh, really?
I thought that was the most random thing I'd ever heard. Keep talking. I'm gonna keep looking it up.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that would definitely be a surprise. I mean, I know he picked up a jump shot in the last several years, but it would be it's kind of nuts to think if he can't dunk. Wait, I mean, I guess it would make sense if he can't, because eventually you do lose athleticism, I guess. But I don't know. I mean, that guy was like, when you thought of like, I felt like definition of like all-star dunker in the NBA, that was the guy you thought of for several years. Like watching him play with him and Chris Paul play together was insane.
Apparently, so according to Tim Reynolds, I guess who's a NBA reporter, Blake Griffin hasn't dunked since December 12th, 2019.
Okay, but there's been like a lot of COVID stuff.
COVID, and he might have been injured, but he's played in games. I would have guessed that I would have guessed that he had. My guess would be that he probably averaged a dunk a game, and maybe just now he just, like you said, injuries and stuff like that. But anyways, it's a very interesting little stat line there. But I don't really think that means anything, to tell you the truth. Yeah. It's just kind of a funny thing. But I think he can help, but like he's not a great defender. Right. So I don't know really what you're expecting much from him, or if you are expecting much from him. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's probably going to be a similar thing to a lot of the LeBron teams we saw win, like particularly like maybe the Heat. Like when they were winning, it's like after you, like once you have LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh all on the same team.
Yeah.
It's like you really don't need. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have like, in particular, you're going to get a lot of those veterans towards the end of their year that are trying to get the rings.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I get it. I get it from like a
which
different
makes sense. But
standpoint.
like, what I was gonna say was like you need other guys to be able to contribute in some facet, but like you also like they probably don't actually really need that much out of Blake Griffin. If he just adds like a bit, uh, as long as you're not like a J.R. Smith and
Yeah.
nonsense at the end of the game. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what I guess the Nets do.
Yeah.
Before I get off on Blake Griffin, because I feel like this interesting little sidebar topic and maybe this is why we need Reed to keep us on track on some level.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I feel like I want to get into this conversation anyway, out of curiosity. So how do you define a good draft class? Like, would you define a good draft class by the amount of good players, or like if you had like some studs, like some of the biggest studs
I
in
get
the
what you're
NBA?
saying. I am going with players who stuck like depth. I'm going depth. Players who played, let's say, like an average. I don't even like 5 to 7 seasons. Like if you get a lot of players who are spending maybe even close to a decade in the sport and actually contributing to teams, I think that's bigger than having like a LeBron, Carmelo, Dwayne Wade draft class. Now that's kind of hard to beat. That's kind of a tough one to beat. But I like the idea of having just a ton of depth from 1 to 30 or 1 to 60 or whatever it is.
Right. You can look like at a draft result and like see several guys that you're like, oh, this guy's still contributing in the NBA.
Right.
Right.
Like there was a year that had, I forget exactly. I think it was the year Kyrie might have been drafted number 1, possibly, but it had like the same draft that Kyrie was in. I think Kawhi was in. Klay Thompson was in. There was another K name. I think it might have been around Kimba's time. I don't know. And then there was even like Jimmy Butler was in the draft. Like there was just a ton of guys, top to bottom, just depth across the board of just great players who went on to who have contributed for a long time.
Yeah, Kyrie was 2011
Okay.
draft. Like obviously he goes number 1.
Let me see. I'm looking it up right now. You're right. Kyrie 1. Kimba was number 9 in that draft. Klay Thompson, Kawhi was in that one. Nikola Vucevic was in there. Tobias Harris was in there. Reggie Jackson.
Jimmy Butler.
Jimmy Butler was at the end of that one. And so that one to me sticks out because it was like, man, there's just a lot of really good players.
Isaiah Thomas was the last pick on that.
And then what's funny is you look at picks 2 through 9 in that draft, and now Tristan Thompson and Brandon Knight. Brandon Knight's still around? Is he still playing? I don't know, but
he's still on the Detroit Pistons.
There were some big names in that. Jimmer Fredette was in this draft,
but I think Brandon Knight had like some kind of like ankle injury or something like that, right? That was pretty bad. Like,
so
I don't remember if it was Achilles or not, but
what gets me about this draft is like from picks 10 on were solid, but picks 2 through 9 were like Derek Williams, Enes Kanter, Tristan Thompson, Jonas Valanciunas. I don't know if he's still playing for the Grizzlies or Raptors or somebody, but Jan Vesley, like where these guys aren't even here anymore. But then you go past that, you got the Morris twins were in there, like Iman Shumpert. Just deep team, deep draft.
Yeah,
so that's where I mark a good draft.
Yeah, that's good because I was just curious because when we were talking about Blake Griffin, I brought up his draft class and his is pretty interesting because so in that top 10 for 2009, you had Blake Griffin was the first pick. Number 3, you had James Harden.
Okay.
Number 7, Steph Curry. Number 9, DeMar DeRozan.
It's not a solid draft.
Once you get past those guys, though, the rest of the class isn't very impressive. Like the top 10 is you had Hasheem Thabeet was the second pick. Then Ricky Rubio was number 5. Tyreek Evans, I feel like he was number 4, was a solid player, but
for a short amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's banned from the NBA now, right?
I don't know.
Pretty sure. And then the classic move of Johnny Flynn will always be remembered as the guy who got drafted ahead of Steph Curry.
Yeah.
Jordan Hill is number 8. And then beyond that, Ty Lawson was 18. He was a solid player for a while. I think it's interesting when you look at these teams, like some of these draft classes too, And granted, this
Mhm.
was 12 years ago now.
Mhm.
I feel like it's just like there's even names throughout here who I remember like Jordan Hill was productive for a little while.
Yeah.
Like it's just I feel like it makes me respect how hard it actually is to stay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like not even just stay on top in the NBA, but just stay productive in the NBA.
Well, and things happen so fast in the NBA, don't they?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
you're
for sure.
gone and then so fast in the NBA. You're a superstar one day, you're a bust the next day, right?
Yeah, like Tyler Hansborough was number 13, and
Oh
And,
yeah,
like,
that's another
and
solid player,
yeah, and
solid
like
college guy.
yeah, and like you were talking about with the 2011 class, like there's guys throughout here who not even like the guys who are still producing around, but like Kenneth Farid's not really doing much anymore.
Yeah,
I don't know if Amon Shumpert is really making a lot of noise anymore.
but even at that,
Parsons, yeah.
Chandler
Anyway,
Parsons.
all of that to say, of just like yeah, it's and it's any sport, it's tough staying in. It's just interesting.
Yeah.
It's like an interesting reminder, I guess. So, outside Blake Griffin, have there been any moves that have stood out to you in the NBA lately, or any rumors or players you're watching out to see where they go?
You know, just to speak locally, I don't know. The KP, the Kristaps Porzingis thing has been weird to me. Like they've been talks.
Are they talking about trading him?
There's been rumors back and forth about maybe KP's on the market. Like when that dude is good, I don't know if there's much people who are that much better as
Right.
far as in his kind of group, and so it just seems weird to me that they would be talking about trading him because he doesn't seem to have this is not the highest value part for him, I think, and so I don't know, it just seems weird. Like the Mavs seem to be clicking, and so I don't think they'll be trading him. That could be a big name. I don't know where Andre Drummond might be gone. Do you think he could be bought out? LaMarcus Aldridge is out there. Maybe he goes somewhere.
I don't know. Right now, I'm kind of just looking at the Heat as being a team that's probably going to be looking to make some moves. And I feel like for them, I feel like they kind of lack a little bit in the maybe having a solid big or even like just adding to the depth over there.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see them making a move, trying to grab Andre Drummond and or LaMarcus Aldridge. Because I don't know if you followed like the whole Myers Leonard thing. That's been kind of interesting, but I don't want to say interesting. I'm like, it's interesting that a player is saying offensive
stupid,
things,
racist, offensive things, right?
Yeah, but regardless, they've not like he was injured and wasn't going to be playing this year anyway.
Well, they were already shopping him apparently, and before that ever happened, and just what a awful thing he said first off, and then put it into that situation,
Yeah, so I could see LaMarcus Aldridge run. And I the reason I'm thinking the Heat are in on a big guy or going to be trying to is they were evidently rumored to be in on PJ Tucker, but apparently the Rockets had to have a high of a asking price for PJ Tucker for them.
Right.
And the reason the reason I think they could get Drummond or Aldridge is because it seems like in both cases, both players are like, whether they get traded or not, they're leaving the team.
Right. Both looking at buyouts or whatever. If they don't get traded, there's gonna be a buyout, and they can kind of choose where they go from there. Now your Rockets sliding hard.
We
talked about your boy Cade Cunningham.
18 game losing streak.
Ooh, man.
But hey, that's still 10 losses behind the Philadelphia 76ers for longest losing streak ever.
After they had the year, wasn't it a year with T-Mac and Yao that they had the long winning streak? The push.
Yeah. That was a 22 game win streak. And honestly, I'm pretty sure if I'm remembering right, I feel like Yao was injured a good bit of that, and so was T-Mac. So that was more of like
fun team.
That was like the team of like Dikembe Mutombo, Shane Battier, bunch of the I think that was the year Aaron Brooks had like a really breakout year.
Was Carl Landry on that team? He was one of my favorite players.
I don't know if that was a Carl Landry year or not.
Yeah, and that goes into so I think they might be shopping Oladipo, but I feel like Oladipo's gonna be hard to move.
I think they're for sure shopping Oladipo because there's been rumors about the Warriors were looking into him, but again, evidently the asking price was too high, which could be a concern because like that was the comment that was made about PJ Tucker
Yeah.
was that his asking price was too high, but then I
Somebody's
felt
gonna
like
pay it.
I felt like the return they got on him wasn't super impressive.
Yeah. Well, you get something out of it. Eventually, they're gonna have to get something out of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that and like when I was like, oh yeah, we're trying to hold out and get something. Grant, my mind is also tainted. Like, even though the Rockets had nothing to do with the trades the Texans have made, like my mind is just tainted of like, this is what you got out of this. But like, the Rockets got like, they got DJ Augustine, another
DJ Wilson, I think.
yeah, and the draft picks they got weren't super
Bad.
great. Like, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't like they basically have the right to swap their second round pick. Like in 2021, I think they have the right to swap their second round pick for the Bucks first round pick, and I think it's unprotected for the Bucks, or it's protected for the Bucks, but the Bucks aren't finishing in that lottery range anyway. So,
gotcha.
But again, it's like Bucks are probably going to finish towards the latter half of the league anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's that. But I mean, granted, when you're going to be going into rebuild, it's not a bad thing to have a lot of draft picks. So,
yeah.
But I would expect Oladipo is probably going to get moved just because I don't think the Rockets are keeping him regardless past.
Yeah, but
granted, and not even if they're keeping him, I don't think he wants to come back to the Rockets, to be honest. Because
can't blame him.
Nah, I mean, like his whole career, he's been getting moved all around to get whether he's had any say in it or not. Like, he got moved from the Magic to the Thunder, from the Thunder to the Pacers, and like I feel like he's kind of proven himself several places where he's gone.
He has the right, in my opinion, to go find a team he really wants to be on.
I feel like
be a free agent, pick the place he wants to go to, right?
I feel like and pick a team where they're going to be like, we want you and we're committing to you, right. Versus you're just going to be like part of a trade package, constantly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't expect them to keep him. Honestly, from what I've read, the Rockets, basically everybody is available with the exception of Christian Wood.
Yeah.
I don't think John Wall will get traded just because I think that's a really difficult contract to trade.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if I would want. I think John Wall is still a solid guy to build around. Too.
Like, you don't think he's too old?
Nah. Is he going to be as effective like as back when he used to have like the killer speed where you could just like basically shove the ball down every team's throat by just like running down the paint? No, he's not gonna be that guy anymore. But I mean, he's still got a solid shot. He's a solid decision maker.
There's something to be said about like, and who knows what's gonna happen. But let's say you guys go out there and you get Cade Cunningham from Oklahoma State, right? Let's say he's a big time player, gets Cade Cunningham. Cool things happen. He's a Texas guy, like top pick in the draft, all kinds of stuff. Wouldn't it be good maybe to have him around John Wall? Even just for an entertainment factor, just for like, hey, let's see what happens. Like, let's just put him around John Wall, just have a good time. Like, just to put him out there. I think it wouldn't be a bad thing. And John Wall, just to have people show up and say they want to watch somebody. I think it's not ridiculous for the Rockets to say like, yeah, we want to put butts in the seats a little bit and entertain people. And John Wall is the guy people know.
Yeah. I think, obviously, like, I'm not going to be upset with getting Cade Cunningham if
it comes to that.
Yeah, because I mean, this season's chalked for the Rockets, obviously.
Yeah.
But I also kind of like Cade Cunningham is a guy I'm keeping an eye out on, and he's a little controversial and got apparently pissed everybody off because he opted out. But I think Jalen Johnson might also be a guy that could be a guy you go out and draft and could be a solid member of the Rockets too. Even though apparently Jim Boeheim's not a big fan of him, but
yeah, well, whatever. I mean, he made his decision. You can't be mad at him for wanting to go out there and get some money too, right? Because he went to the G League, right?
He just opted out of the rest of the NBA season.
Then, okay.
Or not the NBA season. NCAA. He was on Duke. He was a freshman Duke, and he opted out.
Sorry, I'm thinking of another Jalen. There's like so many Jalens. It's a Jalen big time guy from Jalen Green, maybe, I don't know. Let's go. I'm gonna you down to try something a little bit here, but on the notes of draft / NBA / NCAA, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, give me a year, any year between 2000 to now. Let's do 2000 to now.
Okay.
Give me a year. What you want?
Oh, okay. You want me? Okay.
Yeah, just tell me.
2008.
2008. Let's do it. Let's test your knowledge. Let's do 2008 NBA draft. I'm going to give you the player, and I want you to tell me where they went to college. If you can try to tell me what the college they went to. I'll give you the player.
This is going to be a big oof, by the way, but
No. I think you can do. I think you're gonna do well with this. Player. I'll tell you what team they went to, and you tell me what team they played college in.
Okay.
Ready? I think you're gonna do well with this. I'm looking through this draft right now. I think you picked the right one. We'll do like 1 through 15 or something like that.
Okay.
Okay. First one, Derrick Rose went to Chicago Bulls. Played for
Memphis.
Very good. Number 2 in the draft, Michael Beasley went to Miami. Played for
I want to say it was like a Midwest team.
Yeah.
Was it Kansas State?
Yes, sir. See,
Ooh.
you know better than that. OJ Mayo went to played for Minnesota, traded to Memphis.
He went to USC. I remember that.
Yes,
one.
sir. Very well. Very good. Russell Westbrook, number 4 overall to the Seattle Supersonics. Nice. Kevin Love to
UCLA.
Yeah, there you go. A couple of buddies right there. Let me see if you can get this one. So the curveball for you. International player. What country did he come from? Danilo Gallinari, number 6 overall to the Knicks.
Italy.
Nice. Eric Gordon, number 7 overall. Eric Gordon played for. I don't know if I would have gotten this one. Looking at this one, I don't know if I would have gotten this one.
Did he go to Indiana?
Wow. Yes, sir. Okay. There's just no way you can get this one because I don't even know this guy. Number 8 overall, Joe Alexander from the Milwaukee Bucks went to. Do you even know who that is? I have no idea who Joe Alexander is.
I feel like that's a name I've heard, and some part of my memory bank is like I remember him being on an NBA team, but nah. I'm just gonna guess by the name that he'd be like a Wisconsin guy.
West Virginia. Not a bad guess. Had
a W.
Let's do DJ Augustine, number 9 overall.
He was A&M, right?
You're on the right idea. Not A&M, but Texas. And let's do 10. Number 10 overall, Brook Lopez went to. Ooh, what's another guy?
Him and Robin Lopez were Stanford, right?
Nice, very good, very good. That was the year Roy Hibbert was drafted. Do you remember his school? He was number 17 overall. I'll hit some highlights here. He was
I don't remember where he went.
Georgetown guy.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Another one of my favorite players I watched in college, Brandon Rush. Remember Brandon Rush at all?
Ooh, that name doesn't even ring a bell right now.
Yeah, he was one of the top guys I liked in college. He went to Kansas. There you go. So yeah, very good job. You did really well at that. I'm not gonna lie. I think you missed 2 in the top 10.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if I could do that well that many years. I don't know. There's just some guys like I feel like that was like a year I guess that had a lot of memorable people like the Lopez twins and stuff
like I said, you did. I don't know if I would have gotten Eric Gordon at Indiana, but yeah, you did good.
Do you want to take a crack at a year, or do you want me to?
Let me. I'll try. I'll look at a couple of them, so I'll try not to look at one I saw. Let me do. Ooh, let's go 2006. I don't know, 2006. I don't know why. That's going back far, isn't it? 2006. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the only thing is like I feel like the more. Because even just like we were just looking at like the 2011, 2009 draft class, I was like, oh, I barely remember these guys. Much less, I don't know if I can.
Okay. So we talked about 10 a little. We talked about 11. Let's do 12. Let's go a little bit easier. Let's go 2012. How about that?
Okay. Yeah. Well. Okay. I think you might actually do all right on 2006.
Okay. Get to it.
We can also do 2012 too. This is kind of fun.
Okay.
Okay. So the first guy, didn't go to college. Andrea Bargnani.
Okay, so Andrea Bargnani.
He was an international guy.
Yeah.
He went to the Raptors.
What's it? Is he another Italy guy? I don't know.
Yeah.
He was it. Okay.
This one should also be pretty easy. LaMarcus Aldridge went to originally. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, so he's UT, right?
Yep.
So Texas. Okay.
Adam Morrison.
Oh, he's Gonzaga.
Yep. Tyrus Thomas went to Portland Trailblazers.
Oh, Tyrus Thomas. I don't know if I remember this guy. Tyrus Thomas.
feel like I remember the name. I kind of don't really remember.
I'm just gonna take a stab and say Kansas.
LSU.
LSU. Okay. Is he like a? Go ahead,
What?
keep going. No, keep going. Keep going.
Sheldon Williams.
Sheldon Williams. I'm pretty sure he's a Duke guy. Is he Duke?
Yep.
Okay.
That's correct. Brandon Roy.
Oh, I love this dude. Is another one of my favorite all-time NBA players. And he went to Washington.
Correct. Yep.
And he played for the Trailblazers, right?
Yeah.
He hit one of those,
he was one of those injury riddled guys.
Rocket. Yeah, he was.
Which
He's the guy I wish I would have gotten to see him play a little bit more. No injuries.
Yeah, which he was actually drafted by the Timberwolves and traded.
Okay. Change to the Blazers. Okay.
Then we got Randy Foye.
Randy Foye.
He was drafted by the Boston Celtics and then traded to Minnesota.
He seems like a small. In my mind, I'm thinking like a small guy. I'm gonna say UNC.
Right. Villanova.
Okay.
Okay. And then number 8, you had Rudy Gay. Which you
okay, this is my boy from UConn, right?
Yeah. He was drafted by the Rockets and then traded to Memphis.
Yep.
Patrick O'Brien, number 9.
Patrick O'Brien. Sounds like old Patrick O'Brien went to Notre Dame, played for the Irish. No, yeah, I don't know. Let's go with Patrick O'Brien. Let's go.
He was drafted by the Warriors.
I don't know this one. Let's go with Kansas again.
Bradley.
Okay, well, sure.
And I'm going to skip 10. I'll give you a shot at 10, but I don't even remember this dude at all. Mohamed Sane.
The guy who played for the Atlanta Falcons for a while?
He was drafted by not the Oklahoma City Thunder, but the Seattle Supersonics.
Syracuse? Yes. Oh, now I'm getting my sports. Let's go with Syracuse.
He was from Senegal, actually.
Of course.
But this one should be an easy one. I'll give you 11. Like this will help you. Is this more reasonable? JJ Redick.
Oh, he's a Duke. There's Duke.
Yeah.
2007 cover boy for 2K Hoops, college 2K Hoops.
And how awesome was it when we used to have college video games?
Man, they're coming back. That's what matters.
Yeah. Except we're not gonna have like Notre Dame and.
Yeah.
So any other NBA stuff you about? One I wanted to bring up. One guy I wanted to bring up was Nikola Vucevic.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's gonna be an interesting.
You think he gets shipped? I think the Magic are looking to trade him and Gordon, right?
Yeah. Vucevic is one of those, like, if you're a team looking to counter what the Lakers have in Anthony Davis, Vucevic's not a bad option. Like, he's got size, he's got a shot. So maybe like, I don't know if I remember a team I was thinking maybe you could pick him up that was maybe the Jazz. Just because I was like comparing him to Rudy Gobert, and I feel like he gives you more than Rudy Gobert gives.
Really?
Yeah. Like, Rudy Gobert is an imposing defender, solid rebounder, but so is Vucevic. And he's just one of those guys that I feel like gets forgotten about.
Totally underrated.
Yeah, he just gets forgotten about because he's on the Magic. Like, the only reason people, I feel like, know Aaron Gordon is because he's, shown up for some dunk contests,
Yeah.
Which... Actually, interesting on some of his rumors too, is I was reading a possibility of the Timberwolves maybe trying to go for him.
That seems weird to me.
Yeah, well, the thought process would be, like, obviously Timberwolves aren't doing anything this year, but you have 2 young players who you're worried about basically leaving if you don't start putting it together next year, but you still got time in Karl Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell.
Right.
So maybe if you get like I don't know, I was just reading about the Timberwolves being a possible surprise buy team.
Yeah.
At the deadline.
Let me give one for Vucevic here for him to go somewhere, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head a little bit. Like, what about the Trailblazers? Would that be a solid team for him to go to?
I think so, right? I mean, their big is basically, I think. Do they still have Whiteside, or did he's on the Kings now?
Yeah, I think they have Yusuf Nurkic. Is he still playing for them? I don't know if he's still injured.
Yeah, I think Nurkic is there.
Nurkic.
Remember, he's the guy that it's getting to that late part of the night. Who's the big on the Nuggets right now?
Oh, Jokic.
Jokic, that's it. Yeah, I just couldn't think of his name was just not coming to my mind. But I was reading about like Jokic originally was offering to like bench himself so Nurkic would stay.
Oh, yeah, probably the right move for them.
But
That's
yeah,
right, 'cause he was on the Nuggets for a while.
Vucevic with the Blazers could be pretty fun. Like put him with McCollum and Lillard.
Yeah, that'd be a fun team to watch. I don't know. I'm with you. I think that he could make a team really good. The Jazz would be interesting. They have a deep team, dude. They got Conley, Donovan Mitchell, Gobert. I think they still have Joe Ingles there. Joe Ingles, however you say his name.
Yeah, the
So
Australian.
it's a solid team that we don't really think about too much.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think so. Maybe to bring all this NBA talk to a close, and maybe we close it here. Maybe save NFL topics for next week because we're getting kind of late.
We hit all on basketball here. Let's go something else next week.
Yeah, to talk about to wrap up the NBA side of it. I want to talk about like the Pistons and trading Blake Griffin or losing out on Blake Griffin or releasing him, whatever they ended up having to do there at the end. It's nuts to me the Pistons have fallen off as much as they have because they went from, I want to say it was like 2002 to 2008, where they had that insane streak of like, they went like 6 straight years or something like that of going to the Eastern Conference Finals. You had 2 finals trips,
Billups, all that group,
a championship out of that run, almost 2 championships. They lost that close 7-game series to the Spurs. But anyway, and I was looking, they have right now the longest. I found this out by looking when I was looking at the record for NBA losing streaks. The Pistons right now are on the longest playoff losing streak, and they've lost 14 playoff games in a row and haven't won a playoff. And they haven't won a playoff game since 2008.
Wow.
And this is a Pistons team who, I'll say, like in the Eastern Conference, that's not known for being loaded with a lot of great teams. That at one point had Blake Griffin, Tobias Harris, Andre Drummond, Reggie Jackson, all on the same team at one point.
And then we're saying they didn't even win a game.
Yeah, and that I think that was even when you had Stan Van Gundy as your coach. You had even Luke Kennard on your team, and the crazy thing, not talking about Luke Kennard, but those 4 guys, and I saw. Maybe it was like Bleacher Report or somebody like that. But you had these 4 guys and you turned it into a 2nd-round draft pick. Like they just haven't gotten anything for any of those guys.
Yeah.
And what I want to talk about with them too is like you also look at teams like the Suns, who through a lot of that same era the Pistons were dominant, had some like really strong runs through the Western Conference Finals. Like you had like those Steve Nash teams that were really good. They haven't been to a playoff game since, or they haven't won a playoff game almost in that same span since 2008. And one other team I want to bring up, the Sacramento Kings, they were super dominant in the early 2000s. They haven't won a playoff game since, or I don't even think they've been to the playoffs since 2006. And you're talking about a Sacramento Kings team that took that at their peak in the early 2000s, took the Lakers, like put the Lakers to a 7-game Western Conference Finals. And what makes me scared about when I see those teams and when I look at the Rockets right now is I'm like, we've been having like this really solid stretch of dominant run, and like you can always turn a rebuild around into like making it something productive, but I'm also like scared of becoming like, man, what if we become like that team who was like dominant through like the 2010s, early 2000s, like, in like 15 years, we're talking about, man, when was the last time they won a playoff game?
Yeah. Like how often, and I just saw the picture of them all together, and it was like Ariza, PJ Tucker, trading PJ Tucker was the final piece of the team that was in the Western Conference Finals against Golden State. And I hate to bring up the awful memories of CP3 going out and then them losing Game 6 and Game 7 to Golden State. And we'll look back on that team, and then whoever does this podcast 10, 15 years from now, I'll be like, you remember that team with James Harden, Chris Paul, PJ Tucker, Trevor Ariza? That was a good team. And then now the Rockets, like I said, the Rockets haven't been good in 10 years. But I don't know. Like it's just, that's like we said with the NBA, everything is so fast moving, right? Superstars are so fast moving. And then like you said with Minnesota, the perfect example is like you can have all these high draft picks, you can have all these great players who are putting up great stats, but sometimes they just don't win games. They just don't win games for some reason.
Yeah, or you just miss on a guy like you wonder like with the Timberwolves be in a different spot if they picked Steph Curry over Johnny Flynn, or they still, or is Steph Curry the guy you forget about, and Johnny Flynn somehow becomes this guy who are like, man, how'd you pick Steph Curry over Johnny Flynn?
Right. And I think you're totally right, because it's like there obviously is talent is talent. It's going to be so good. Steph Curry obviously is, super talented, but it sometimes is always about situation. Not always. Sometimes it's about situation. And if you're in the wrong situation, wrong group, wrong team, and in that prime time when you really have a chance to establish yourself, if you're not in the right spot, you get screwed.
Yeah. And maybe to wrap all that up into a nice little positive package, and I feel like you'll have some good stuff to add here. We talked about like the draft classes and stuff like that, and all these guys we forgot. But what was crazy is during that entire time span, even when those guys were getting drafted up until very recently, until a few key guys decided to retire, the Spurs were on the top during that entire time with basically the key core of Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the stat of like the 2000s, the top 3 winning percentages of the 2000s? So like from 2000 to now, which 3 teams in the NBA have the top 3 best records?
No, I have not seen it.
So number 1 obviously is the Spurs.
Yeah.
It was something like they could lose an entire season and still be like the best percentage team, and that whole time they could lose like 82 games in a row or some ridiculous stat like that. So they were number 1. Obviously so good for so long, and I still think they're going to be a good team. People are just not going to pay attention to them as much, but they have a good solid foundation between DeJounte Murray, Derek White. The moment they get in a hold of another really good draft pick, just watch out. Like I feel like they're such a good solid organization still. So number 1 being San Antonio during that time, number 2 I believe is the Dallas Mavericks, and number 3 is the Houston Rockets. And so Texas basketball just like owned the 2000s as far as just winning percentage overall. They owned the 2000s.
Yeah, that's
as far as consistency and everything like that. And teams go through up and downs and all that, but those 3 Texas teams stayed highly on top.
Yeah, and I just wanted to touch on like what the anomaly of the Spurs of just being like, I mean, the Rockets and Mavericks. I had Dirk Nowitzki through all that, but I guess how difficult. I don't even know if the Spurs could have kept that core together, like if those guys were in today's NBA at their peak. But I don't know, even at that time, like it was just such an anomaly to keep.
It was.
I mean, like Duncan and Ginobili were both there until the end, and even Parker left at the very end. But
and Ginobili, the guy to me is, I mean, obviously it all starts with Duncan. I think he's one of the greatest of all time. But Ginobili, one of my favorite guys, and I think he is one of the underrated factors as to why that whole thing worked, because he's that guy who put his ego aside and like, oh yeah, I'd love to come off the bench. And he influences guys, in my opinion, he influenced guys like Patty Mills. And he's like, Patty Mills kind of has that role now. He's had that for a long time. And just the depth from top to bottom. And yeah, you're so spot on. That team is just so good for so long.
And he was the all-time leader. He's the all-time Spurs leader in bats knocked out of the air.
Oh my gosh. That's a great stat to end on for sure. Good word.